Brandon Carlisle with Tough Enough Movement. I'm here with Bracken Atkinson, and today we're going to kind of go through his life and talk about some things. Bracken, one of the reasons I brought you on, you want those or no?
We're good.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. One of the reasons I brought you on is you're somebody I've always kind of looked up to and everything like that, but as a coach and a person, but then also I know you've had struggles, and then I think that you'd have a good outlook and insight on other people as well, being a coach and involved with your work and everything like that, and all the relationships you had. I feel like you've seen a lot and people have talked to you. And so I think you'd be really well versed in this stuff.
Yeah. It was a little background on this. A couple weeks ago, I got that phone call from you about coming on and doing this podcast. And so I jumped on and watched your first couple, your introduction. I watched Rigby and Jamie, I think, was the second one.
Yep.
And I was intrigued a little bit of it because, what you're doing and what I'm seeing from you and from these people that are being vulnerable and putting themselves out here is very refreshing that you're able to do this. And then obviously I wouldn't be sitting here if I didn't have the same respect for you after being involved in coaching and seeing what you've done in your life. We've crossed paths numerous times in different ways. Obviously started with football. There's been some personal life situations that we've crossed paths and so when you say that there's a respect level for me, I would say that is reciprocated for you. I've always thought very highly of you, and I'm excited to do this and kind of talk through things and interested to see where we go with this conversation. I can get a little long-winded based on whatever the topic goes through, but looking forward to it and hoping that there's people out there that gain something from these conversations, from what I may share, the vulnerability I may present today, that maybe it'll touch somebody and help them realize that, hey, life's not as bad as I think it is. There's people that do believe in me. There's people that do care about me. And maybe there's better ways to find a solution to my problems that I'm faced with today. So anyway.
Great. No, I like that. So yeah, we'll just start. Where were you born? Raised, kind of thing.
So I'm a poor farmer's kid. I grew up in Clarkston, about a half an hour from here. So I had a great childhood, oldest of four boys. Like I said, dad was a farmer, mom worked whatever she could. We were a pretty blue collar family, which was fantastic. We all learned to work. We all learned the value of every dollar. We were taught basic, how to treat our neighbors, how to look out for other people. Community full of other kids where every single day of our life you're up at the church playing basketball or baseball or football or soccer or something of that nature. Every sports team was just your local kids from Clarkston. You didn't have to worry about the bigger city or paying big fees or anything like that. And so, yeah, I grew up out there, completely engulfed in sports. My dad was a farmer, but my uncles on my mom's side were all athletes, played high school football and soccer and basketball and everything. So I'd go to their events and just wanted to be them. And great childhood, great upbringing, very blessed to have two amazing parents that showed us work ethic and showed us how to treat other people with respect, dignity, and always put others first, regardless whether they even had a nickel to their name. They made sure that our neighbors were taken care of before they took care of us. And there's a lot of lessons that I've learned from them that's been pretty awesome that hopefully I'm carrying on to my kids and in my community.
It's pretty interesting to me because same story with me is blue collar background, working and everything like that. But with parents and family and stuff like that, it seems like people like that do put other people first. Like you see somebody in trouble, you always want to help, and you teach that to be like there when you see somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the other night after we talked, I went to Christmas Carol down in Salt Lake last week and kind of watched it with different eyes. There was a little bit, I learned a little bit about the Christmas Carol and why it was written. I'd always felt like it was this, magical play about the ghost coming and showing him his past, showing him this and everything. And there was this happy ending and all this stuff. But I before I went in, I was told that there was a different reason why this was written. Charles Dickens was trying to protect the kids that were being abused through labor laws. at the time. And I know I'm going a little bit off topic, but anyway, it was enlightening to me because he, for 10 to 12 years, was fighting the government, trying to protect these kids in the factories and in the mines and in everything, and this is 100 years ago. And so they weren't getting breaks. They weren't being fed, I mean, 8, 9, 10-year-old kids are basically dying in these factories or being abused with labor laws. So he wrote this ghost story to try to get attention for it. And so as I watched it the other day and I was looking at it, and I'm going to get back to your point as to people that don't have anything, and we've all seen the movie and we've all seen the play and we've all seen it in our own different way, but in the play, whether it's here with the local player, whether it's down there, there's a part where Scrooge is looking at, I think it's the present, and he's out in the park and he's seeing all these people that are struggling. He's seeing the couple with their kid that's on the verge of losing their house to him, ironically. And, they're very sad. And if you listen to the song, it's talking about whether the baby's going to live or survive because they don't have anything. And then you see a beggar woman come over, and there's just a bunch of people that are really distraught, but yet they're all singing, they're all dancing, they're all sharing. And a trickle-down effect happens where one of the people who is poor is given a shilling. And that person goes directly over to another family and gives them that shilling that they needed. And if you pay attention, there's usually somebody that gets food or bread, and they go and give it to somebody else. And there's like a 3-minute period in this play or this movie where you get to see the best of humanity, where everybody at their lowest point in life receives what they need to sustain their life, and their first thought and inclination is to look around and find somebody that needs it more. And so back to what you're saying, I think that when you can grow up in a blue-collar home where you can feel the struggle, you understand what you're going through, so there's an empathy for other people out there. And so you're always observing those around you, and you're always observing who has less, who needs help, who whatever. And then the other aspect of it is when you want to be, as a human being, someone that helps other people, but you don't have financial means to help in that way, you tend to look for ways that you can help them through acts of service or through doing something, which makes you a lot more alert to your environment. And so once you do get that extra dollar, that extra $5 or something, now all of a sudden you're able to do something more than you typically can, and therefore the reward to you selfishly may be greater than it was the day before by helping them with an act of kindness. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes complete sense. That's kind of, I mean, it's funny because that's kind of how and why I'm starting this kind of thing, is a way to give back in the most basic sense of, like, I don't have a lot to, like, go out and do this and buy all these things and help and fix these big problems, but I'm like sitting down and having these conversations and becoming vulnerable and getting people to talk about these things is, I'm hoping, a way that will help somebody else either reach out for the help they need or feel something inside to make them be like, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit on the head when you're talking about people that are in a bad situation being willing to reach out. There's two folds to every bad situation, whether it's somebody that's struggling with addiction, struggling with financial woes, struggling with any marital problems, anything like that, is there's always someone that wants to reach out, right? We all tend to have this, we're either a hero or we're a victim type thing. And the heroes want to make sure that they get their reward. They want to reach out, they want to help, they want this. And then there's a victim mentality that they want to be taken care of, right? We talk about those two people all the time in society. But what we forget is there's also two other personalities that play a huge part in what you're talking about. And this is just me going off, like, as we talk for the next hour or so, just know that everything that I'm saying is just my opinion. And everybody can tell me that I'm wrong. I don't care. But I'm just going to share. But those other two people are, you've got people that want to help without reward. And most of those people really don't know how to help, right? They may be the person that drops off a gift Christmas Eve for a family that's struggling, rings the doorbell and leaves and never says a word. They may be somebody that comes and shovels the driveway of an elderly person. No reward. That person is going to make an impact on somebody's life dramatically without that reward from a third party person. They do it out of the goodness of their heart. But they typically aren't the ones that get told about true needs in their society. They have to be extremely observant. Now, on the other side, we talked about the victim mentality, but there's also the people that are silently suffering, right? To be a part of a victim mentality, you kind of have to be vocal. You kind of have to present that you've got problems. But if you're that silent sufferer, you're that person that's maybe hiding with your addiction at home, wanting help, wishing somebody'd call me, wishing somebody'd reach out, but yet you haven't let anybody know that you have this problem, right? Whether it's addiction, marital problems, financial problems. And I think the key to society is, how do we mesh those two together? How do we get that silent sufferer to be found, or to at least let themselves be found? Because sometimes there's pride in the way, right? How do we let them connect with that person that is just the giver without reward? Because they typically are symbiotic. They don't take advantage of each other. We'll let the hero and the victim, because they have their need, let them help each other.
Yeah.
But how do we pair up the other personalities?
Yeah.
And I don't know what you've been in your life. I'm sure you've been on both sides. You've probably been the silent helper, the silent sufferer. I know I have at times. In my darkest, deepest times, there's, my pride would be in the way, obviously, of telling anybody what I was struggling with. But in the back of my head during those times, it was like, man, I just wish somebody was here for me. And once you get past that, you look back and you're like, well, why would I think somebody was going to be there for me if I wasn't willing to share that I needed somebody?
Yeah, if they don't know, they can't be there. And that's definitely where I wasn't going to be vocal about it because I felt weak and
Yep.
I felt looked down upon, and
Yep.
I felt like if they did help me, it was out of pity, not out of just the kindness of their heart kind of thing. And so it was like, you do with your pride, you're just like, you hold it in, and then you're just like, then you kind of get to a point where you almost think that in general people don't care about
Yep.
you, even though, because you don't say these things, you hope that we can see it or can know it, and I don't know why, because you didn't tell them. There's no reason for them to be like, what's going on, what's the problem? Like, so if you don't talk about it, then they're never going to know.
Yep. And I guarantee in your darkest times, and I remember you and I having a conversation when I think you were in a pretty dark place, and I remember shutting the door after a conversation. We ran into each other outside of my apartment, and I remember sitting there, and it was like, man, I love this kid. I don't know what to do. And that's another aspect of it, is like knowing how to care, right? I didn't know whether I'd come and pull you by the short hair and say, hey, pull your head out, we got to figure this out. Do I give you a hug? Do I tell you I love you? Which I think that was the route I went that night, was we kind of had a hug and told you I love you and everything's going to be okay. But at the same time, I was left like, I still want to do more, but I don't know what to do. And maybe that's because over time you start getting burnt a little bit, where you go and help the wrong person. So then you just kind of pull back and say, you know what, I'm going to leave it at arm's length. I'm going to give him a hug, tell him I love him. I'm going to tell him I'm here. But do I believe you're going to call me tomorrow when you need that help? I hope you do. But we walk away from it. Now, I don't know if you knew or felt, or if anybody, and I'm isolating you because we're talking one-on-one.
Yeah.
And it could be anybody, but how many times do we reach out and say, hey, I'm here for you? And people go, yeah. And they just move on. And how do we help these people say, okay, somebody said that they're here to help me. I need to test them. I need help. I better text them. I better call them and let them prove me wrong. I need to take a little bit of responsibility for me to reach out for this person, because in my darkest times, your darkest times, I'll bet if we look back, there was somebody there, a family member, a friend. They may have made us mad. They may have said something that in the time our ego's in the way, but they were trying to help us and we didn't let them. And maybe the help we were asking for, they didn't want to give, but we never found out because there was just this border of protection on our own personal thoughts and feelings of ego and failure. And, I don't want anybody to know about this. How can it impact this? I'm a man. I've been told my whole life, suck it up, figure it out. You know, there's a TikTok going around where they interview a bunch of men and they ask, who's there for you in your darkest hour? And like 20 men just tear up and say, nobody. And then the very last person says, somebody can be there for you. And I've seen that come across my feed numerous times, and I appreciate it because I need that reminder, right? That there are people there for us. And as men, we kind of been told and we've been trained based on our generation, our parents' generation, our grandparents, that figure it out, man up.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm a little old school. I think there's part of it that like take responsibility for yourself, but allow for other people to be a part of your solution and be vulnerable.
Yeah. I think taking responsibility is a different thing than like needing help, because, and I think it took me a long time to take responsibility for certain actions and things that I did and everything like that. But once you learn that, and that it's separate from taking responsibility from I put myself in this thing, to when you're in a really dark spot that you just need somebody there for you, kind of thing. It's not like you're not asking somebody to do something great. It's like sometimes you just need somebody to talk to.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, that's I know as I've watched some of these other videos and then just thinking through things over the last 2 weeks, I think that's one of our biggest issues is just vulnerability on the part of the people that need it to accept or to take advantage of the opportunities of help. I think being willing to help and being willing to maybe jump out of your comfort zone to do something for someone that you typically wouldn't. You know, not everybody's capable of sitting down and giving somebody a hug. You know, what are they? But maybe they need to, or maybe their way is going to help as well. You know, not everybody can write a check, not everybody can give counsel, not everybody can this. And I think that we limit ourselves because we all look at our own home and go, I've got so many problems in my life. I got bills, I got kids, I got life, I got schedule, I've got so many things. Like I don't have the capacity, I don't have the time, I don't have this to help somebody else. They got to figure it out. And we've witnessed that over the last 3 years, especially, that probably the biggest eye opener of these last 3 to 4 years of our society is the closed door mentality. You know, there was a medical issue 3 years ago that kind of shut down the world, and what did everybody do? Like half the country, well, probably most of the country shut their door. And they look across the neighbor and they look across their family members and they're like, I'm shutting my door on you because you can't help my life. You don't believe what I believe, so I'm going to shut my door. You shut your door, and we're going to isolate ourselves. And we're going to forget humanity, we're going to forget society, and we're going to forget that I have needs, and that need may be as simple as a waving to you as I drive to work in the morning. You know, and I know that as we look forward, a lot of people have asked me over the last year or so. I get a lot of random people reach out to me asking for advice, and a lot of times I don't even know who they are. But the one thing that I've always told everybody, especially the last 3 years, is you know what we need? We need to be neighbors. Like we really need to be neighbors, and we need to take care of each other. Like, and whether that's forgiving each other, whether that's understanding each other, whether that's being there for somebody. Like I think that's our biggest hole in society is being willing to be a neighbor, listening to their opinion without judgment, listening to their needs without judgment, and being willing to be there for them in act and deed, and allowing them to be our neighbor, allowing them to help us, right? And I think if we could teach men, especially, I'm not going to talk to women because I'm not a woman, I don't understand them, but I understand what it's like to be a man. But if we can teach men, especially younger, how to do that, how to be open to their vulnerability and how to seek out opportunities to help others in their vulnerability, we're not going to change society, but we're going to change a fraction of these men's lives and give them an opportunity to help another fraction of the men's lives in their society.
And it could be, I mean, when you're saying that fraction could be the people that are struggling most, or the people that they might be the best person in the world. Like there are some really good people that are going through hard times that if you help them just that little bit, they're going to help so many more people.
Yep.
Like,
well, let's take the example. I mean, I'm going to put you on the spot. whether you realize it or not, the amount of people that look up to you and follow you and your example in your life, and you've obviously found a way to be in a very good place in life, that through your previous videos and through some of your experiences that you've shared, that wasn't destined. Like, to be where you're at today was not destined based on the trajectory of the choices you'd made and the life you made through what you've shared. So if you have the amount of people that are looking up to you, and I don't know if you realize the amount of people that watch you, follow you, or look up to you. This is kind of where that coaching thing comes in, as I got to see you as a person and to see how everybody reacts around you. And it's very simple. When you see a small group of 50 men and people follow somebody, that 40 out of those 50 look up to somebody, I don't have to see the rest of your life to understand that that's going to happen everywhere you go, right? That people are going to look up to you, whether it's family, friends, or just some stranger. It could be a coworker, it could be somebody that you're working in their house and they just observe what you're doing and whatnot. You have that influence on somebody, on these people, right? So just by you pulling yourself out of that dark space, you change the trajectory of not only yourself, but those that have been following and watching and using you as an example, right? Because they may have been following you down that little rabbit hole, but now all of a sudden you come up the other side. How many of these people are looking at you going, hey, I can get there too? He just shared this experience about that resonates with me. Sorry. Why can't I do it? Why can't I pull out of my darkness? Jamie Butters, who was your second interview, same thing. I mean, let's go back. I haven't known Jamie as long as you have, but I've known him for quite a while, and we've had a lot of conversations over the last 10 years, and I don't want to put him on the spot, but where he shared his experience, that man is a very influential person in this valley.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
He has a lot of people watching him every single day on social media. They're going to his store. They're looking at him. And I don't even think it's because they like Jamie. They like what he represents.
Yeah.
They like that he's a winner. When I say a winner, he's winning at life. He's succeeding at the hard things in life. He's overcome very difficult things.
Yeah.
Some of them were situational things. Some of them were self-inflicted things. But he's vulnerable. He's willing to talk about those, and he's willing to share how he got over those. And he's willing to set an example going forward of giving, taking care of people. I mean, we've had conversations where he's called me, and like, he is personally vested in the well-being of random strangers around him. Well, that rubs off. And if that rubs off on 5 people this month or 5 people this year, that's 5 people that are now following his example, 5 people that are following your example, 5 people that are following my example, right?
Yeah.
And so, we need to take those opportunities to be vulnerable in that aspect, but hiding everything in the closet so that we can make sure that people that need to hear our message can hear our message, because we present ourselves as the tough one. Right? We present ourselves as the one that can handle adversity. We present ourselves as the one that don't care what everybody thinks. We present ourselves as willing to take the daggers that most people won't. So if we're willing to be that person and that brazen, then we need to show our vulnerability to allow other people to see, okay, this guy doesn't care what people think, and he's also gone through things I've gone through. So why, if he can go through that and I can go through that, maybe I can get to that other side like he did.
Yeah, no, I completely agree there. And that's kind of one of the reasons as well, where I was going into this, was that I want to show people, because, like, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a counselor, I don't have this college degrees. Like, I'm a blue collar construction grunt. Like, and that's what I've been. And it's like, I've struggled with things, and I've learned different ways to cope and figure things out and how to affect me and then other people now. Mm-hmm. And so I'm hoping that you can show people that you don't have to be that person. You don't have to have the degree. You don't have to have this much money. You don't have to have this much power. You can just be a regular person from any kind of background, and you can make an effect.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they make a bigger effect than we'll ever understand. Like we talked at the very beginning, this is the average person can influence more lives through example than any influencer on social media can do in a year. You know.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, somebody looks at a TikTok video, you spend 60 seconds, and you get a little buzz from your dopamine or anything like that.
Yep.
You get a little kick for 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody in that day, like, you drop something and somebody helps you, like, you remember that throughout the rest of the day. Like, oh, this person, and you will tell people, like, or if somebody bought you a coffee kind of thing, it sticks with you.
Yep.
So the actual action directly to you is way more powerful than a 10,000, 100,000 views.
Well, and there's some reality to it, right? I think a lot of us realize when they're watching that influencer and there's 100,000 people watching them, and we enjoy following them, we enjoy what they're saying, but there's no real correlation. So we can never picture ourselves being that person. But the person that bought me a coffee this morning, I can picture myself being that person.
No.
So which one's more influential on this person's life? It's obviously the one that they can tangibly become. They're not going to become a Kardashian, but they can become Brandon Carlisle. They can help somebody in need. And to this point that you're talking about, I mean, the biggest proof in the pudding is the drive-through buy the car behind you's lunch, or whatever you want to call it. We've all done it. We've all pulled up to the window and somebody says, the car in front of you bought your food. There's two things that happen in that moment. The first one is an extreme feeling of gratitude. Doesn't matter how mad you are, what place you're at, there's a gratitude to it. Somebody thought of me. Some complete stranger thought of me. And instantly, our physiology goes, I want to pay for the guy behind me. Because good creates good, right? We crave those moments to help somebody. We crave them. And back to your example thing, I read a book years ago. I don't remember what it was called. It's been so long, and I'm horrible with remembering books. But one thing stood out to me, and it was a self-help book. It was when I was going through some tough times, and I figured I'd go through self-help and read all these books and do all these things. And I'm going to read books about success. That's how I'll be successful. I'll read books about success, right? That always translates. But I'll never forget there's a chapter in there, and it talked about the first step to success. And it said that the first act someone should accomplish in their life to prove they're capable of being successful, and I'm sure you're going to say make your bed because everybody's heard that. He said, always put your shopping cart back in the grocery store. And if you think about it, it doesn't seem that significant, right? Make your bed, that's a personal thing. That's your one-on-one. And I think everybody should have goals like that where they can accomplish something, get them off their feet. But if you really think about the shopping cart thing, it's a snowstorm. Let's say here in a couple weeks, it's snowing. It's getting close to Christmas. The parking lot's full of people, and you're freezing. Put your groceries in the cart, and I can just set it next to my car, right? Or I can walk it to that cart area, 50 feet away, 70 feet away. By choosing to take that cart down that way, and this is me going off script, this isn't me quoting the book, this is me just looking at it over the last few years since I saw that, there's several things that happen. One, I have to make a conscious decision that I'm going to go above and beyond what is necessary. There's no rule that says I can't leave my cart right there. Somebody's going to come pick it up.
Yeah.
It may not be cordial, it may not be societal accepted by society, but realistically, I'm not breaking any laws. I'm not doing anything wrong by leaving there. But first of all, I'm going to choose. I'm going to take this cart and I'm going to put it in the where it belongs. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to take 2 extra minutes, right? So there's my personal sacrifice. There's my need to discipline myself today or to do something. But then you start stepping back and you go, okay, what's the influence of that putting that cart back? Well, I just walked through the snowstorm. I walked 50 feet. I put the cart back. It's snowing. It's blowing. And 2, 4, 6, 8 other people just watched me put my cart back. Human nature, we all tend to have this weird feeling about, oh, that guy just walked his cart back. And now all of a sudden other people are putting their cart back where it belongs, right? But then you start thinking deeper and you're like, you know what? Somebody has a job to collect these carts in this winter condition. and I have an ability to affect their evening by doing something that takes me 45 seconds.
Yeah.
Put it back or leave it here. And so I keep giving, I'm on my fourth example, but every action we do during the day, when I started reading that and I started thinking about that, has a ripple effect that we'll never understand.
Yeah. And if you think about, like you said, you not putting it back, like then the cart person has to get it, but it's also a ripple effect of if you don't put it back and then 8 other people don't put
Yep.
it back, instead of 30 seconds, that kid spends 12 minutes
Yep.
walking. So it's a ripple effect there
It
where
is a
people are
ripple.
like, I just watched him do it now. And that kind of happens in society as well with the all of a sudden, not just one thing affects just a little bit of time, but when everybody else follows that example, it's a bigger
Yeah,
effect.
absolutely. Absolutely. And it all goes back to what we're talking about with struggling, that ripple effect. You just don't realize how small of a thing you can do that's going to impact multiple lives. And paying attention to friends and family that are having hard times or going through hard times. Um, being willing to send a text, call, stop by, and just see if they're doing okay. What is the ripple effect? Like that? That's your shopping cart, right? How hard is it to see somebody and be like, "Hey, you doing all right?" All I'm doing is putting my shopping cart away, right?
Yeah.
You can tell me I'm fine and walk off. Does like I'm doing my due diligence, putting the shopping cart back. But what if that ripple is the thing that helps that person that day or that cart collector that day? Like that's where the ripple starts. And if we never ever try to put our cart away, we never start the ripple. If we never reach out to the person we think is struggling, we never start the ripple. We never give them an opportunity to utilize that as momentum towards a better day, a better hour.
Yeah.
Right. Um, yeah, we can go in a lot of different ways. I'm kind of going off topic. I don't know if you want to.
Oh no, yeah, no. I mean, that was a great long tangent that we got onto there, but I think felt like it was a really focused towards this movement and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess if we're gonna go back on topic, we would go back to so after high school, we'd probably go into your life of what happened after high school and where you went, and then we'll.
Yeah. So, high school. If we go back, I went to Skyview. Um, I had a really good high school career as far as friends, surrounded by good friends. Very involved, very active in school. Uh, very well known as far as I was very involved with getting to know everybody, going to dances, doing everything that if you were to look and say, okay, this is what you're supposed to do in high school to enjoy high school, I probably checked every box, right? I was very involved. Played sports. I played football while I was on the football team. I shouldn't say I played because I wasn't very good, but I was on the team. Tried out for other sports. Like I said, wasn't the athlete I thought in my head I was, and therefore I didn't make those teams. But I lived high school to its fullest, and then towards the end of high school, I kind of got caught in that blue collar mentality. Like I got to get a job. I went out and started working at auto leave, working graveyards while I was still in high school. I was in a hurry. I'm making good money now. I got to get an apartment. Now I got to get this. And so before I graduated high school, I was living with buddies. We were working full-time jobs. I had 2 hours a day at school that last semester. And then next thing you know, it's, hey, we're having a party. We're doing this. And before you know it, our Friday, Saturday, Sundays revolved around as if we were frat kids, 18 years old. And how many people can we get to our house? How big of a party can we have? Let's live life. We're in a hurry. We're making money. Let's go to Vegas. Let's do this. And, kind of banged my head against the wall, I guess, for about a year where it was like I was chasing something, but I didn't even know what I was chasing. Because it didn't make me any more popular, any cooler. Like it didn't make me feel better. It didn't make me richer. It didn't make me anything, but it was just like this weird, dead time in my life where it was like I was chasing some sort of idea through debauchery, in a sense, like partying, playing, like we were going to accomplish something. And I did that for about a year, and then just was kind of miserable. And so I moved back home with my parents. And a few months later, I ended up getting into religion and went on a mission down to Argentina for 2 years. And came back and kind of started living my life. And, about a year later, just kind of got a friends group and we were living together and hanging out and kind of started living life again, getting a little crazy, getting a little out there. And it just kind of has been a pattern in my life, like figure things out, slowly kind of creep into making poor decisions, get my life figured out, slip into poor decisions, and I'll admit that over the years from 18 and on, like one of the issues that I've always struggled with is I've always struggled with alcohol. That's and when I say struggle, it's not just because I drink alcohol, but I can go where I can take care of it, I can handle it, I can drink here and there, and then all of a sudden I'll slip, and for a couple weeks or a couple months, like I go into a pretty deep, dark place, and I've paid a lot of consequences over my life with relationships and different things during those dark times. And so, and then back to our previous point, there's always been somebody in my life that's just kind of been a lifeguard, kind of reached down, slapped me, pulled me out of the water, like whatever it was needed in that time to kind of wake me up and to kind of recorrect. And I'd recorrect for a while and then drop back down into that slide, and so that's kind of continued and went through life. I had a marriage that lasted a few years, and I moved to Boise and chased career, and had a couple kids, great kids, amazing life. They're amazing, and then we ended up divorced. And once again, it was like, okay, I'm going to do good, slide, do good, slide, do good. And ended up 10 years ago finding my current wife, Amy, and we got married. And we've got a little Brady bunch of my 3, her 2, and then we've got an 8-year-old together. And but yeah, the demons are still there. I mean, even today, there's times where it's just like, man, I'll go weeks where I'm good, and then all of a sudden those demons come, and it's like, okay, I'm going to slide. Like I just want to avoid life. I want to get out of society. I want kind of type thing, and I don't think you don't actively think that. It's just back to our original conversation, even at this stage, at almost 45 years old, and I'm sure if a lot of people watch this would be like, yeah, but why would he do that? He's successful. He's this. He's that. Well, that's your perception of me, right? Because you don't understand that I still have my faults, my anxieties, my demons, my issues that maybe I need to get away from every once in a while, and it's not healthy. But I'm grateful that throughout that 20 years or 25 years, there's always been that person that pushed the cart, that person that would be like, hey, you're right. That person that knew when it was time to say, knock this off, man. Look what you're going to lose, or these type of things. So I look at it and go, okay, I understand my demons, and I'm grateful that I had the cart pushers. I had the person that was going to pull me out, or else where would I be? And but it also allows me to be very understanding when I see people that didn't have that person, right? Because I do acknowledge that without the right cart pusher, anyone could slip beyond their own ability to recover in these type of things. And so, I don't want to hide from them. I'm not embarrassed about them, because they also have helped me a ton in understanding other people and their issues and their problems. And part of it, like, I've been through failure. Like I just said, I was divorced, which, you lose time with your kids, you lose financial stuff, like everything. But that also was on the tail of 2008. I was up in Boise, had a good job, chasing, for a lot of years, I chased success, chased money, chased whatever, and failed a lot. That's I used to tease that I'm one of the best failures there are in life, and a lot of people take that wrong, and I take it as I'm not afraid to fail, like, because I failed enough and realized you bounce. Like when it comes to life, if you're willing to, you can fail, bounce, get back up, and keep going, kind of thing. But yeah, I went through 08, got laid off 3 times in a year, lost my house, lost my car, lost everything. Learned a lot, through that time period. Most people don't realize, that I did that. Saw some pretty dark things, thought some pretty dark things. But here I am today because parents instilled in us that you just keep moving forward, you know. And I remember way back in when I was laid off and we were up in Boise, and just put this in perspective with people that think that they are afraid to fail, I guess you can say. So I'd lost my job. It was the third time I'd been laid off, and if you remember '08, like it was just dime a dozen, right? So I'd get a job, a month later it'd be gone. Get a job, and I had a newborn baby at the time. She'd been in the NICU. We had a ton of bills, just really struggling. And I remember going to McDonald's and Walmart in the same day to apply for a job because I had to have something. Like I was going to lose my house. I was going to lose everything anyway. I just had to have some self-worth of working. Like I had to get back on my feet. So I went to these two places, and I remember like it was yesterday, went and applied, and both of them instantly sat down to give me an interview. I mean, and McDonald's, I remember she started asking me some questions. What have you been doing? What have you done in your career? And I started telling her what I'd done for the last 10 years. And she looks at me and she goes, I'm sorry, but I'm not wasting my time with you. I'm like, excuse me? And she goes, I'm only hiring people that are desperate enough to stay here right now.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and I go, I'm desperate. And she goes, you're desperate today, but if another job comes tomorrow, you're going to leave.
Yeah.
And I go, well, yeah. Like, there was nothing against McDonald's. Like I would have worked there for the next 2 years. Like it wasn't a matter of I was too good for McDonald's. It was just a matter of I think everybody in society and in life should always be available to improve their situation.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was honest with her. Yeah, if somebody offers me a better job tomorrow, I'm going to take it because it's my kids and my family that deserve for me to work a better job. Like this has nothing to do with me being, but, and Walmart told me the same thing in the same day. And I remember driving home. Like, it was a dark couple hours. I just pulled off on the side of the road and I just sat there and I'm like, man, am I that worthless? You know, that I can't provide for my family. You know, I can't even get an entry level job at 30 years old. Like, what do I do? Right? What do I do? So, yeah, I kind of went all over there, but so I saw some dark times. And, you know, there was never anything that pushed me over the edge. There was never anything that I was threatened or whatever. But there was a lot of dark thoughts and dark feelings during that time as to inadequacies. You know,
Oh yeah.
you can't provide. You can't even. I had to call my mom for $20 to transfer $20 so I could go buy formula for my baby one day. You know, it was crazy, but I also learned through this, Brandon, you bounce.
Yeah.
Like I hit rock bottom financially, career wise, everything. And after a few weeks of it, of going through this hell, you start to go, wait, I'm still here. Wait, my kids still love me. My family's still here. You know, and end up getting divorced, but like my mom, my parents, everything, you know. And so right now we're going through into, you know, 2023, a lot of weird stuff going on with interest rates and society and all this stuff. And a lot of people are really afraid of the future. And I'm not telling anybody they shouldn't be afraid right now, but I will tell you that you'll bounce. Like bad things are going to happen to all of us, and we can either let them crush us or we can use them as an example to get through. But financial ruin is probably one of the biggest fears that they teach somebody to keep us in a box, right?
Yeah.
It takes somebody losing everything, and I don't know your financial situation to know if you've ever hit that point where it's like you've hit rock bottom financially. You can't even financially cannot even afford today's life, like your lunch, your gas, your whatever. And I think that people that can go through that and realize, okay, I can survive anything financially, and I can make my life better, end up really ricocheting. But then there's the other part that just ride on that thing, and they probably are smarter than the rest of us because they realize, hey, I don't need this extra stuff. I've got my family, I've got life, I've got this. So, you know, a lot of different perspectives there. But yeah, it was a dark time back then, and I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful that I was able to have those learning lessons because I can relate to a lot of people when they're going through financial difficulties and stuff, and say, hey, I remember this. Let's talk through it. This is what I did. This is what you should do. That type stuff. So
yeah, kind of helping.
and that's how I ended up meeting you. If we want to go full circle, so I mean, I'd always coached Little League and different things like that, and then we moved to Boise, and I had a nephew up there playing Little League, and so I my uncle asked me to help coach, and so I coached him on Little League, and we had a little player on there whose dad coached at the high school, and so he'd come to practice and watch us coach, and so he invited me to come to the high school, and so I was at the high school that first year. Throw the balls around. I wasn't really an official coach, just kind of watched and observe. And then the next year, he's like, hey, you should join our staff. And so I went and joined the staff and helped with the freshmen up there. And those 2 years, one throwing the ball and one actually being a coach. But and then all this happened, layoffs and everything. And we moved back to Utah and ended up going through a divorce and pretty lonely, dark time. And, reading a lot of books through the night, trying to sleep before I had to go to work. Miss my kids, and we had a buddy who ran a football team, and he called me and said, "Hey, I know you're going through some tough times." And he's like, "But I also know you've been coaching football and a little bit here and there. We could use your help on this little weird startup football team. Just come and observe." And I said, "Yeah, I'll come and watch. I don't have time. I got to make sure that I dedicate everything to my kids and stuff." And so that's how I met you. As I come, and we showed up and watched a bunch of ragtag people trying to play football in North Cache football field with the lopsided goalposts, and traveling to Montana and Idaho and everything, and just observing and watching for a little bit. And then, I've got a very strong personality, and slowly I just kind of pushed everybody around to be heard, I guess you can say. But it was out of need, and that Dave was a cart pusher that day when he called me, and whether he realized it or not, he gave me an opportunity to rejoin society in a very dark moment of my life. And I don't know if you or any of the rest of your teammates even realized where I was at when I joined you guys, that I just lost my house, my job, my car, my family. Just I had nothing. And then all of a sudden I get to join a little society, a little fraternity or locker room of guys that were just amazing. And years, I don't know how many years we even did it. 7, 8, 9, I don't even know how many years we did it, but the draw was it was a safe haven for those that were lost in essence.
Yeah, it's weird because thinking back to it as well, because when we started, because I was 21, 22, and that's when you came in and everything like that. And it was kind of one of those things where I'd missed football, and everything like that. And I'd kind of fucked up my college career and so I didn't end up doing that and everything like that. And it had been a couple years since I'd really been involved in anything. And so me and my buddy Casey, we were just like, let's go play. Like we haven't played together in 4 or 5 years. And at the same time, it wasn't like a really dark time, but it was like kind of lost. Like, what am I doing with life and like that? And coming into that team, it was just a really weird, it wasn't like, it wasn't instant, but like after we hit a couple practices and we became a team, that companionship that we had and everything like that was that was the highlight of my year, was football season. And it was like, we're doing this for fun. We're paying to play with a group of grown ass men and we're driving 10 hours to the border of Canada to go play. But that kept me going through the year. It was like, football season's almost here. Like, I'll get through it. Like, and it's like, we're not sitting down and talking about each other's problems as boys and men. We're not like, oh, this is struggling. It was like, but that struggle on the field just brought us together. And it was just something that we needed. And I felt like a lot of us needed it. And it was a weird kind of thing to have. But
no, it that was my favorite part. I mean, we did a newspaper article I think with the Herald Journal, it was 2010 when we won the championship of the league.
Yep.
And they did an interview, and they didn't put this in the article, but we were talking about it, and we were trying to describe what our football team was, and we were talking about the melting pot of men that we had there, because we had some men that appeared to have their life put together, family, career, life, rubbing shoulders and being best friends and being mentors or being mentored either way by people that didn't have work, didn't have job, divorced, life. I mean, we'd go to Montana and I'd have to call parole officers to make sure that numerous people could cross the border with me. It was insane the amount of chaos, life chaos that was on that football team, but yet nobody knew. Nobody knew the chaos. Nobody knew whose life was in shambles, whose life wasn't. There was a brotherhood, and there was exactly what you're talking about with this podcast is there was 40, 50, every year it grew, men who needed other men or other people and needed to be there for other people. And I mentioned to the newspaper after we described it, I said, if the government knew what we were doing for these men, we'd get federal funding. And she started laughing. And I said, no, I'm not being a jerk. Like, we are rehabilitating each other on our own dime. Like, everybody's paying their own way. I'm paying my way to go and coach you guys. You guys are paying your way to think. But there was a subtle rehabilitation of society inside of that locker room that people gravitated towards a better life. Like, it was amazing how many people that didn't have jobs by the end of the football season, they're working with a buddy from the football team and their life's starting to change.
It was our own type community kind of thing. Like, it's funny because even when I run into people now, like, I haven't seen them in 12 years. It's like I see them and I'm like, I light up. I'm like, oh my hell, like, how are you? Like, how are things going and everything like that? And we had each other's kind of backs with random shit.
Yeah.
And I think, because I know a little while ago you had made a post about something about wanting to get back into coaching because you thought that youth needed something like that.
Yep.
Like, so what would you say, like, sports, or is there something about sports that brings out better in people, or is it something?
It's the locker room.
Yeah.
It's the locker room. And what I mean by the locker room is not what actually physically happens in the locker room, but sports brings out a locker room atmosphere of safety and relationships and just stability, right? Just what you just talked about. I mean, you go back to high school, you go back to any sport. In order to succeed on the field, you work so hard. Your off season, your season, the blood, the bruises, everything that comes about it for a high school kid or a college kid or something like that. And nobody understands what you're going through more than the guy that has the locker right next to you, right? So when you walk off the football field and you go in that locker room, every person in that locker room understands what you went through that day, and so there's a bond there. There's this weird bond after conditioning, and this weird bond after losing by one. There's this weird bond after winning the championship that nobody else can in the stands or anywhere else can understand. And through that process of 6 months or 5 months or whatever, of bonding together, you create this society or this self-awareness of who I am in this little small society. You need me, and that makes me feel validated. I need you, and that makes you feel validated, but it also allows me to express what we've been talking about this whole time is a man's need to be vulnerable, right? And so inside that locker room, there's so much vulnerability. There's so much trust that's where the memories are from. 20 years after every high school kid's career, ask, 1 out of 100 is going to tell you what the score was to their final game. But I'll bet 80% of them is going to tell you a story about something that happened in the locker room or something that they went out with their buddies or they hung out. Like, they created this friendship group and this trust factor with these people that help propel or pull back their life going into adulthood. And I think that's what's missing in society is that locker room doesn't continue. And that's why a lot of kids, after they get done playing sports, is they really have no idea. Yeah. They always want to talk about, well, they had a coach. It's like, no, the coach does nothing. Like, I mean, they want to give coaches a lot of credit. I can come and yell at you all day long. I can make you run laps all day long. I can tell you what time to be at practice. At the end of the day, that means nothing because you're not going to show up for me. You're going to show up for your teammate or your buddy that's in the locker room that you don't want to let down. You know, back in the day, one person's late, everybody did push-ups or up downs or run laps, right? And society now wants to look at it and be like, look how they abuse these kids by doing that. Look how unfair that was. And it's like, no, it was unfair. And they took it too far. You know, maybe they should have done 10 push-ups or 10 up downs for getting late, not 100 or 200. But we also need to understand our impact on our surroundings in society.
Yep.
Like we need to, like those lessons we learned in the 90s, in the 2000s, if I'm 2 minutes late, my whole team pays for it. Like that is something that is gone in society.
Yeah,
like,
I think it gives not just account because it gives you the accountability for yourself, but like if you have to do something, it's not that big a deal. But when you let down your team and they have to do it, it really like makes you take this accountability. Like, shit, I let my team down, and it makes you step up. How you're performing, how you're showing up, things like that.
So now you graduate from high school, you got no sports, you got no locker room. You have parents that are still telling you got to go somewhere. You probably have a professor telling you got to show up to class. You probably have a job that their boss is telling you to be doing stuff. But most people, when they get out of that area, they still have an influencer. They still have a coach in their life, but they're lost because they've lost the locker room.
Yeah.
You know, go to the gym. You know, and I know you're a big gym guy, and I'm obviously not a gym guy, but I've been in enough gyms that if you sat and observed a gym, you know, you'd see somebody lifting a lot of weights, you'd see somebody hitting on somebody, you'd see whatever. But if you really paid attention, you'd realize that the people that come on a regular basis, the first thing they do is interact with the other people that come on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And so if you step back, it's like what is the glue that's keeping them coming and improving their lives? Not the gym equipment. It's that locker room mentality of they have a place. They mean something here. You know, I walk into the gym and my buddy's going to come over and say hi. So-and-so is going to give me crap. Like I have a place in society. And we're losing that. We're losing that locker room. And I think the locker room is the trust and your place in society that is secure. You've earned it. You know it and you're accountable for it. And that's the hard thing with what we're doing with these young people is we're isolating them. Sitting them on a phone, on a computer, you know, their friends are all digital. Where's their place? Where's their locker room? Who are they bleeding with? Who are they sweating with? Whose back do they have?
And then when you say that, when they're sitting on a screen and they're having these conversations like that, it's like nothing that you do affects somebody else. Mm-hmm. So in that same sense, you're thinking nothing you do affects anything.
Yeah.
So it just becomes kind of more selfish. It's all around you, and it's like there's no community like the locker room or anything like that.
Yep.
And so these people being distant like that just doesn't have that closeness of you're affecting other people in anything you do kind of thing.
Yeah. And we're seeing it more and more where people just are oblivious to the surrounding of other people, whether it's driving down the street, whether it's in a grocery store, or, you know, we as a society are becoming very self-absorbed and probably a little bit selfish, and we just forgot about other people, you know, and I think that's why so many people are getting lost in their own demons, you know, because people have always been lost in their demons. You know, this is not a new thing. For hundreds of thousands of years, people have had demons. They've had their you know, addictions and their trials and their tribulations. I just think that for a long time, there's always somebody to pull them out, always somebody to grab onto them, always somebody to, you know, maybe it was just going through the demons together and you both survived it together. You know, I mean, you don't have to necessarily pull somebody out of their demons to be successful. Sometimes, you know, a good locker room buddy is going to go through those demons with you, and we're going to go all the way through the bottom and up the other side. But where are those people now? And we keep talking about being vulnerable and being this, but you touched on a big point, that the selfishness of the online screen, you know, the only way they're going to be vulnerable is if it has a certain amount of likes on the other side.
Yeah.
So is that vulnerability? You know, there's that self-propaganda, you know, and then you're just, Now all of a sudden, instead of being humble and saying I've got a problem, I need a problem, it's like, hey, I'm going to use my problem for self benefit. And so then you guess what? It worked. I got 100,000 likes because I cried about my goldfish dying. So tomorrow, guess what you're going to look for? What other chaotic thing happened today? What other catastrophe can I take advantage of? And all of a sudden, you've completely shifted your whole vision on life into negative things, because negativity gets you more likes, more popularity than the positive things in life. And so it's sad. I look at my kids and look at the society they have to live in, and realize that their kids and stuff, that they're gonna have to be very strong. They're gonna have to be way stronger than I ever thought of being, to kind of stay true to themselves and not get pulled into these you know societal norms of making sure that it's more important that you get 1,000 likes for your post than you shared a heartfelt message that somebody can actually reach out and make sure you're okay.
Yeah, it's different than like relaying what had happened and like trying to get likes that way than to actually um the words not going right now, empathize with it and
Yep.
actually be like, what can I do? Like, is there some reach out or something like that? It's different.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is we ignore the process now. Everything's result oriented. So if I can't get a result out of something, why do it? I'm not going to post unless I get a result. I'm not going to work out unless I get a result. Like, there's no process anymore in society, and so with no process for success, uh, we're not going to have processes for failure either. Like, people are going to give up. You know, we can go back and find people that have slowly failed through life because they've followed the process, and during that failure of going through the muck, a lot of them end up coming up the other side. Now, we're so self-absorbed, we need that instant gratification. It's either, before we even start the process, we either tell ourselves we've succeeded or we tell ourselves we failed. And let's be honest, how many people succeed right off the bat? Nobody does, so they fail. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of, okay, now I'm not even going to try because I just always fail. Well, you didn't fail. You set your expectations wrong. You set your goals wrong. And I'm not a big person. I don't like goals. I'm not a goals person, and because of that, because I feel like everything should revolve around a process.
Yep.
If you wanna go to the gym and because you want to bench 200 pounds, like, putting on there that you want to bench 200 pounds is not going to get you to the gym every day for the next 6 months.
Yeah,
It's going to get you to walk into a gym, try to bench it, can't do it. Maybe a few weeks later, come back, try it again. But if you were able to sit down and say, okay, I'm gonna do the process. I'm gonna show up to the gym 3 days a week for the next 3 months and see where we're at. That's how goals used to be. Like, we laughed at our grandparents. You stay in the same job for 40 years, you get a good gold watch and a good retirement. Well, life was different. You could do that back then, but it also was a reflection on society that everything was the process.
yeah,
You know, life was simple because it was all about the process, enjoying the process. And now, hell, we don't even want to walk into the gym to do the 200 pounds. We just want to take a picture of the gym, say we were there, and then maybe say next year we didn't do it this year. We'll do it next year, but not even try to do lift the weight. Like, it's a really strange place. But yeah, I don't know what we do. I don't know how we help people, or to see that their process is the important part. I mean, if you were to look back at your last 10 years, really step back, you might be able to find one or two things that stand out that were like, okay, these were game changing moments. Like, this was a day that I remember. This was a day. But I'll bet if you were to step back and look at your life and say, these 10 years, how they get from that point to this point, you would be able to visualize that long, curving process that got you there. And you'll find, okay, this helped, but wait, I did that on a regular basis through that process. This person helped me. Wait, that person I remember was there on a regular basis.
yeah,
Like, there's very few things that are positive outcome wise in life that are situational, like one time thing or something happened. Ironically, most of the time when we screw up our life, it's usually that I did this that one time. The kid that never drinks, gets DUI the first time he drinks. Completely alters, the potential trajectory of his life. It's the one-time person. It's ironic that those that go through a process, even if it's a negative process, like as you're interviewing people, I want you to pay attention to this. But even the people that went through the dark part, that have the negative, the addictions of this, like it's usually not the ones that just kind of burrowed it out for a long time that end up in a bad place. Because in order to have that long process, you got to have a certain ability to control your desires, your wants, your whatever. Usually you're going to, kind of drop off, jump up. It's going to be that person that has that issue that one time I'm going to do something really stupid. Or whether it's intentional or not, it's going to be that one time moment crash. Like it's just not a good thing. But yeah, we got to get back to processes. And part of that process is learning how to enjoy each other, love each other, and be patient with each other, open to each other, be a neighbor.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you say the process, so I think that when you say that you're the most successful failure you were talking about, but it was a process of trying, learning. It's like if you fail at a couple things, it doesn't make you a failure.
No.
It makes you somebody that's trying and learning through that process. That's one of the things that I feel like that I haven't done, is that there are things that I wanted to do and things I want, but I didn't have that in me to try. I'm like, I'm going to fail. So I wouldn't do things. There were things that I just didn't do because I always assumed I was going to fail. And that's a mental thing.
It is.
But it's like where you're saying, trust the process. You got to learn. You got to learn that you can bounce. Learn that you can get back up. Learn that and then whatever failed and whatever didn't work, you can learn from that and grow.
Yep. And to your point with your failure, that you didn't try things because you're going to fail. I mean, I talk about how I was a good failure, but I'm always putting that in the light of my career. Like for some reason early on, I realized that other than that time in 2008 when the economy was just horrible, I realized very early on at 16, 17 years old that if I don't like this job and I fail at this job, I've got 10 other jobs I can go get. I always knew people from family relationships or whatever. There's always jobs available. I learned at a very young age that I had skill sets with sales and different things that I could utilize. So there was always something I could fall back on, right? So that fear of failure in my career wasn't as significant, but yet the fear of failure, it's been 25 years where I never even worked out or went to a gym because, I think I tried your gym 8 years ago and you basically told me that I probably had to pick up something else because I passed out and puked and all kinds of stuff. But it was more of a self-fulfilling prophecy of I grew up as a kid that loved sports, but was never, I was self-aware enough to understand that even though I didn't make the team, I wasn't upset because I knew I wasn't good enough to make the team. And that same self-awareness about my athletic ability spilled over into a fear of failure in whether it was exercise, working out, going to the running, biking, hiking, doing anything that was outdoors fun, all of a sudden became correlated with my childhood experience of not being good enough athletically. So I'm just going to avoid it because I don't want to go on this 10-mile hike with my buddies that are going on because what if I fail? What if I can't do it? I'm just going to hold myself back. So you bring that up as far as maybe a career, maybe some other thing, like trying different things. Maybe it's freaking Mexican food. You've never tried Mexican, but we all pick our own battles. We all tend to look at, okay, I'm going to chase what I can succeed. Yeah. You you freaking kill it at the gym because at a young age you realize, hey, I can do this, right? And so you've done feats that nobody else can even comprehend with your CrossFit stuff and with your gym and with your sports stuff. But yet you may focus on the stuff that you regret not doing because you're looking at failing. Versus me, who realized that, hey, with jobs, I can find something tomorrow. But heaven forbid you invite me to the gym or go on a hike, because what if I die? What if I end up with an asthma attack on the side of the hill? Oh, I can't do it. I'll fail. So I'm just going to focus on what I'm secure in, and I'm going to avoid those other things that I don't feel comfortable in. Does that make sense? So like we're the same person. I think everybody out there has those same things, and And it kind of leads me into when you first talked to me about coaching, and I was watching some of these videos, and I started thinking about the kids, and we're going to go back to kind of earlier when I was talking about helpers, non-helpers, and the football players, and we always talk about kids that are in. I guess let me start back in the beginning when we were kids, okay, and you went out for the football team, basketball team, baseball team. Very quickly, the coaches back then, and no knock on how they coached back then, but they decided very early on you can either do it or you can't do it, right? If it was a tryout sport, they knew who could do it, who couldn't do it. They kind of cut it in half, and they only focused on who could do it. If it was a wrestling, football, or something like that, where they had to take everybody, if you remember, they determined very quickly you can do it or you can't do it. Separate the herd, focus on the can do it, ignore the can't do it. That was back then. Go play JV, go play scout team, go whatever, because you can't do it. There was nothing. And they probably still do it to, I mean, I've been around coaches lately and I've coached. So they still do it, but not to the same extent, just because there's so many more progressive techniques and coaching's changed a lot. So right off the bat, you can do it, you can't do it. You're going to get the training so that you can do it. And now it's up to you if you actually can figure it out. So you start looking at it, you're going, okay, the half that can't do it, a lot of people are going to talk. I've heard parents talk about, yeah, I wish my son could do it, but he's very insecure. We hear all the time, yeah, she's insecure, he's insecure, this and that. And I kind of struggle with that a little bit with sports when it comes to insecurity. Because first of all, if you're insecure, why would you be on the field? Parents don't scare their kids like they did in the 1900s. I'll say, where I had no choice but to play sports.
Yeah.
Like my mom basically said, "You're going to play," and I'm grateful she did. But there was different reasons back then to make me play sports. That I got home later, didn't need a babysitter. Kept me busy, kept me out of trouble. But now today, parent says you're going to play sport. Kids don't care. They're looking at me, I don't want to. So first of all, if they're on the field, if they're out playing in the high school, college level, I don't think you can use the term insecure anymore. I think there's two things that happen when somebody's considered insecure in an athlete. I think there's two different feelings. I think there's most of those kids that would be considered insecure either feel inadequate or irrelevant. And so you got the kid that was probably a lot like me, that was not athletically gifted. I was undersized, understrength. I just didn't measure up. So I would consider that myself, I would always question whether I could do something because I felt inadequate to the other athletes. No, was I insecure? Hell no. I was there an hour early. I was there an hour later. I knew every single play, everything the offense did, the defense did. Like, I was very confident in my presentation, but I was inadequate. And I felt inadequate. And so there was times where I would not put myself in a position to succeed in order to protect myself from my inadequacy or my thought of inadequacy. And I think that carries over a lot with people in life where they're not insecure. They feel inadequate. They don't feel like they belong here.
Yeah.
And that gets confusing. And the other one, the irrelevant, is kind of one of your other interviews when you're talking about, he mentioned as a kid that he came from a blue collar, kind of struggling financial background, and how hard it is. And we all kind of grew up in a similar blue collar, but when you're dealing with people that have, and you're the have not, it's not necessarily that you're insecure. It's just that you feel irrelevant in society right now. Like, that person's more important than I am.
No.
We're going to go try out for the basketball team while Jimmy with the brand new soccer shoes and shorts and everything, he's going to make the team. I'm the poor kid from Clarkson that's not going to make it. I'm irrelevant. Nobody wants me on there. My dad can't write a check. So you kind of put yourself into that mindset of, I'm either inadequate or I'm irrelevant. I don't think there's a lot of people that are on a athletic field that are truly insecure about why they're there. In fact, I think there's a lot of people that are probably, if we're going into the other side, is people talk about confidence and different things like that, and or arrogance or whatnot. And I think the two things that I would say based on what I've coached is um, there's self-aware athletes and there's ignorant athletes, and those two both come off on confident and arrogant.
Yeah.
Okay, so a confident kid that's always they always talk about, oh, he's so confident. It's like, no, he's self-aware. There's a quarterback I coached that was one of the best athletes I've ever coached. And I remember numerous times where this guy, I'd call a player, we'd talk, and he'd look at me and be like, I cannot do that. Call something else. Now, I could look at it two different ways. I can look at that guy and be like, no, you're going to run it because, or I can realize, hey, this dude is amazing, but he's self-aware of his inadequacies. He knows he cannot do that one thing. And I can respect that. And that to me is the confident kid. Like, and if you look at the kid that people would call confident, they're the ones that usually are very honest with themselves and their ability. You know, back when you were playing for me, you know, you could tell me if you're going to get 3 yards, 5 yards, 10 yards, whatnot, but you also were capable of telling me when you could not do something.
Yeah.
You know, because you had a self-awareness of your ability on that football field or in life, as you do now with your career, that is probably the most valuable out of all four of them that we're talking about. The ignorant kid is the one that just thinks that, put me in, coach, I can do anything, that has no self-awareness. That's the kid that usually comes across very arrogant, very cocky, you know, and self-confidence. And you're like, and people are always talking about, I don't like that kid because he's arrogant. It's like, no, he's ignorant. Like, he has no clue that he's not good. He has no clue that he's rubbing you wrong. You know, we all have a coworker like that at some place, you know, that's just like, holy cow, how he just can't figure it out. It's like, no, he really can't, because the ignorance inside of his psyche does not allow him to see that self-awareness or what he truly is. And I think that as I look at my friends that have struggled, I think most of the friends that I've struggled with have kind of been, a lot of them been in that ignorant stage where they just didn't think they'd ever get in trouble, or they'd get caught, or they'd get, you know, because they just kind of were that ignorant person and ignorant self-awareness to get down that road. And I look back in sports and stuff, and would it have been better for somebody to correct them and to put them in their place, or did we just pacify them and now all of a sudden they don't have that locker room background and they're diving as far as society and their personal life? But I think that carries over as we're talking to or helping out friends and different things. Is, you know, that locker room mentality is, you get a call from one of your friends tonight, let's say, that's struggling. You know, you are going to know from that locker room or from your relationship which one of these four personalities is this person.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to be like, okay, is this kid struggling with inadequacies? Does he feel like he's inadequate in life? And does he feel like he's irrelevant? Does he feel like he's self-aware or confident in himself? Or is he which is probably not that one. Those ones most time usually self-correct. Or is he the self-ignorant person that has no clue what's going on? And the reason that's important is for you to help him when he does reach out, you kind of have to have an idea of which way you're going to be playing that.
And where to, how to interact with
Yeah.
them, you know?
Yeah. You know, because you can't thump an ignorant kid on the forehead and tell him to wake up.
Yeah.
You know, and
they'll just go to somebody else.
Yeah,
like,
because
there's something wrong with him because he didn't understand.
Yeah,
like,
I didn't get the answer I liked, so I'm going to go and talk to somebody else that's going to tell me that I'm fine.
And that's kind of, you can almost see it sometimes. Like, you'll watch that person, if they don't get the reaction from one person, they'll just go to another person. Yep. It's not like they're coming to you because they trust you, they respect your opinion. They're coming to you for some sort of validation in their self-recognition.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about too, with going into coaching, where there are kids that you can see that some have it and some don't and everything like that, it's a hard spot to be in. But like, it's also one thing I struggle with now with youth coaching is that they're doing this to these kids in a rec league with 9-year-olds where, like, you know, you have, okay, well, they got the 10 minimum plays. They did that thing. So when I used to coach, I always made sure to get that. But then also at the same time, I wanted the kids to learn. And the best learning experience I had from that was we coached this basketball team, which is weird because I'm terrible at basketball. But right out of high school, I get roped into coaching this basketball team. I'm like, all right, let's do it. We get in there, and we've got two solid athletes, but the rest, they're not athletes. And I'm just like, all right, well, what do we do with this kind of situation? I'm like, we've got one or two good kids, and then we've got 10 kids that, our first game, we got slaughtered. Like, we lost by 36 points. And I'm just like, okay, we're changing the way we're coaching. We're not going to coach like that. We don't have these all-stars. And that's where I learned what we ended up doing is getting that companionship. And I did. I'm like, one thing I can do is condition you guys, and I will make you play defense. We will base our game off of conditioning, defense, and hustle. And watching that team transform, because by the end of the year, we played that team that slaughtered us by 36 points the first, I don't know, it was something like that. But we played them again in the championship, and we beat them by 24 just by taking these kids and I didn't tell them, you guys aren't good. I wasn't like, shit, like, you guys are screwed. That's not what I did. I just said, we need to change this up. Yeah. And I was like, so I just got them to come together as a team and to be confident in their other players and hustle and work and play defense and play to their strengths. And watching that team that we thought wasn't going to do anything win a championship like that and see from the beginning of the season to the end, I was kind of like, we should do that more with coaching of, sure, it's fun to win and it's fun to go for a championship, but that should be if you're paying for it. But you made a team and you're making a competitive team and it's competitive. But if you're doing a rec sport, bring them in, teach them how to play, teach them how to be teammates.
And your issue right now is can you find 10 parents that are going to allow you to do that with their kids today?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the truth, whether you're at rec league or high school or whatnot, is are the parents of these children willing to let you spend that time teaching them the basics, teaching them the fundamentals, teaching them how to hustle? Because they also are part of our instant gratification society. I mean, you and I are as well, but the parents, they're looking at going, I've only got 3 years of high school. He's got to be on the field. He's got to figure something out.
Yeah.
When I first started coaching in high school, like 15 years ago or whenever it was, I've got a kid that I was at the freshman, and I went freshman, sophomore, junior, JV, and varsity, kind of in a weird, like, it never happens, but I did do that for those 4 years. So I followed this kid all the way along, and I think I had 28 receivers, and like, I'd set up cones, and he couldn't even find the first cone. Like, it was exhausting. And but I was dead set that we were just going to do drills, and I remember the head coach coming and being like, "Hey, you got to do more team." I'm like, "No, all we are is a glorified little league." And he's like, "What?" I'm like, "Not in a negative way." I'm like, "We're going to just focus on, you gave us the playbook for your varsity. I don't care if we win a game this year. We're going to focus on how to run a route, how to catch a football, and that's it with the receivers. And running backs, we're going to just focus on taking a handoff, getting downhill. We're just going to focus on the fundamentals. And next year when you have them, you teach them how you want to implement that into the thing." And this one receiver just would not quit. Like, he just would not give up. Just tenacity. Like, never got tired. Always wanted to be first in line, but just could not really function for like the first 6 weeks. And his sophomore year, he came in and still struggling, but now he kind of understood the game, but he just was awkward. And but he had this weird belief that if I just work hard, he didn't care if he saw the football field. He was that locker room kid that just loved being with his friends, but he loved to work. And senior year, by the time he got to his senior year, the first of the season, they put him down at JV to go play. And I remember going over to one of the other coaches. I'm like, "Hey, that kid's going to be one of your best receivers by the end of the year." He's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "If you'll give him a chance to be one of your best receivers." And they looked at me funny, and I'm like, nobody does what he's done for 3 years with that much heart and that much determination to fail. And the next week, one of the starters got hurt, and they pulled him up, and he ended up first team all region as a receiver on that team. And I look back and go, what if we would have given up on that kid?
Yeah.
What if I would have been that typical coach? And I don't even know why that year was like, okay, I'm going to be really patient because you played for me. I struggled with patience. But that year, it was like, we're going to make all these kids good. And I think those who were supposed to be starters our freshman year, by the time they were senior, I think two even were playing. Everybody else was kids that developed and kind of rode the pine, played JV, played sophomore, didn't get the fast pass, and they all played a significant role their senior year. And I think they won 10 games that year. But why do we forget that? Why do we forget the process?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think it's back to trusting the process of
Yeah.
being willing to and learning that you have to put the time in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people think they see people doing these things and see people accomplishing things, and they think it just comes easy, and it doesn't. Like, there's a process, and even if it did slightly come easy for them, you're gonna see when it's not easy for them how quick they start pointing fingers, how quick they just want out of the game,
Yep.
how quick they just leave.
Well, you saw it. How many times do we get with our Stampede, with the professional or adult football league? Every year we'd get 3 to 5 kids or ex-college athletes, just natural athletes, amazing.
Yeah.
And as soon as it got hard, they were gone. I mean, think about how many times we did that. Somebody come in and it'd get hard, and it'd be the blue-collar farm kid that was in there taking his place and keeping us going on the process. But yeah, we forget the process. We and I think we're afraid of failure, and not because we're afraid to fail. I think we're afraid of discomfort. Like, we forget that that's part of the process.
And I think we're not as much afraid of failure. We're afraid of people seeing us fail.
True.
You know, because I feel like that's more of a reason that people will stay away from things. It's like, if they were able to fail behind a closed door, they're like, okay, well, I'll give this a couple tries.
Yep.
But when other people see it, then they feel looked down on, or they feel judged and things like that.
Yeah, I think you got a point there. I think that that's the bigger issue, is people worrying about what other people are going to see.
No. And I think that comes back to where I was saying, like, with the coaching, and we could do it as just people, where if you see somebody who has a failure, instead of counting them off as a failure, just being there to help them up.
Yep.
That you don't have to just, good try.
Yeah.
Pat on the back, and just acknowledge that they made an effort, that they tried, or that they were there. I feel like that would be something that could just change a whole bunch.
And like you said, it resonates on the football field. It resonates in life. Just who's there to pick you up? Who's there to lend you a hand, and who's willing to be patient with you while you go through your process? Because I think that happens a lot in life, as it does in football. A football coach gets impatient with the process of his athletes, and I think in life we get impatient with the surrounding or relationships and people that aren't changing quick enough, or aren't understanding quick enough, or just don't help themselves. We tend to walk away and focus on our own self, or on somebody else who could be more successful. So there's a lot of parallels with sports and life that I've been able to see through coaching and it's all paid off with what I do for a living, like not necessarily financially, but just my ability to read people or to understand people through coaching and learning a lot of unique personalities through coaching. It's been really cool. But the one thing that stays true is regardless of the stature, financial ability, professional ability, it's amazing. It all goes back to being a little kid in sports, where people just need validation and support.
Yep.
And over the last 10 years and throughout my last 25 years of career, it's kind of insane. Some of the locker room, boardrooms, offices, meetings that I've been to, people I've met, that a lot of people would probably be just have a hard time being like it just, for example, a few years ago, me and my wife had dinner with Governor Herbert and his wife, and one other couple, I can't remember who they are, in the governor's mansion. It wasn't meant to be like that. We went down there for an event, and somehow that got screwed up, and so we ended up at dinner with the governor and spent 2 hours just hanging out with him, and it was amazing to talk to the governor on that level, to realize that he's no different than you and I. Like, was just a man, him and his wife, very friendly, very cordial. But in that intimate setting, there, he asked about me and really wanted to know about what I did and what this and that. But he told a little joke, and he was really concerned that it was funny. Like, he's like, that was funny, right? I'm like, yeah, it was good. And he's like, but it was okay. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, did I cross any lines? And all of a sudden it was like this is the governor.
Yeah, and he's looking for
validation on this little whim of a joke, and there was a couple other comments through that I was like, you know what? He's just human. Like, even as an elected official running our state, he still needs a validation. Like, he's still struggling with the same things everybody else is, just in a different way and in front of a different camera. But it all comes down to, I mean, as you put this whole thing together, people that are needing to realize that they're not alone, they're not alone. Like, whatever their demon, whatever their fears, whatever that is, you're not special. And I know that sounds horrible to say that, but you're not special. You're not unique. You're surrounded by people struggling just like you, and that doesn't take away from your need to have help. What that means is quit being afraid of looking for help. Quit being afraid of trying to better your life, because you're surrounded by people in the same struggle and the same thing. And why can't you be that lobster that crawls out of the barrel? Keep fighting, keep digging, keep clawing, and get yourself out of the barrel. Find somebody that's going to help you with things, because whether you're struggling now, unemployed, or whether you're the governor of our state, you're going through the same emotional fight. Am I good enough? Is somebody watching? What if I do this wrong? It's everywhere. And I wish that we could help people understand that vulnerability is not, I think that's the worst word. Like, if you think about it, vulnerability, like, we've been taught, like, be vulnerable. Like, and it's like, I understand that we need to be vulnerable, but yet at the same time, it's like, I think it's better to be open and transparent.
Yeah, I think that's a better, because I keep trying to think of a better word to use of vulnerable, because, like, to me, like, it seems like a nature documentary of, like, something getting attacked, like it's vulnerable, and so it's just like you have this negative stigmatism towards the word vulnerable, and I'm like, but open and transparent, say good. Way to put.
Anyway. Well, Brandon, I think we need to do this again.
Yeah, no, I definitely.
I told you I'm long-winded, so we can do this.
Oh yeah, and I was like, we could do multiple. So, but I think it was we had some great points, and I mean, I had notes of questions if we got, and I didn't even have to touch them. But and I felt like that was one of the reasons I could bring you on. I felt like you was somebody who had something to say and has been through things and seen it in a lot of people through a lot of different ways throughout the years, through all your jobs and connections and everything like that. I think you've seen so much that I'm like, yes, he'll have some good input. And so,
no, as far as opinions, you'll always find an extra opinion on me, but that's one of the biggest things that I was excited. And like I said, we could do this numerous episodes on this, is just when you slow down and see what you're doing, when you're coaching or whatever, all you're doing is evaluating the psyche of a person. Like, you can't make them run faster. You can't make them throw a ball farther. You can't make them do anything. In order to help them, you have to understand their vulnerabilities, their strengths, and their psyche. Know when to push them, when to hug them, and people act like that's an easy thing, like to know when to hug a player, know when to push, but it takes time. It takes a process. It takes listening. It takes effort and understanding. And more than anything, it takes trust. You have to earn the trust of the athlete to open up to you in a way that you can actually read who they are or understand who they are, to put them in their best place. And you hope that you put them in their best place. There's still that flaw that everybody forgets, is I may be able to figure out all that about you, but I still might put you in the wrong place for success. And I think if you take that whole thing, whether it's being a parent, being a husband, being a coworker, being a boss, like, do we step back and go as a coach? And I'm probably the worst one to bring this up. If you were to talk to my wife, my kids, or whatever, like this is me speaking from the pulpit more than speaking from experience, because this is probably one of my biggest struggles. Is when I was a football coach, I can take the time to understand you and your needs. As a husband, a father, a coworker, I struggle with that. Taking that time, setting it aside to understand how you tick, and to make sure that I put you, just like a coach, in a situation to succeed, and to put myself in a situation to succeed.
I think that I think a lot of people struggle with that, because I would say I do the same thing. And I think it's that you don't, with personal relationships like that, you don't step back, you don't detach and look at it. Like when you're coaching on the football field, you are detached. You're there, you see everything going on and what needs to happen, who needs to be. But when sometimes in your personal life, you don't do that. You don't look around and you don't figure out, oh, okay, not just, but then also you're involved in it, so you're more involved with what you're doing and not so much with the teammates. And that's why you need a coach. Yeah. And it's like sometimes you have to be your own coach. Sometimes you have to step back. You need to look and see, where am I struggling? What, like, this happened, maybe it was something I did, not something else that happened. But so yeah, so I guess yeah, we've been going for a while, so we can wrap it up. But I'd like to tell you that yeah, I appreciate you coming on here and spending time, and I appreciate everything you've done for me and being there for me. And like I said earlier, you're somebody that I look up to and admire. And so thanks so much for coming on. And yeah, we'll have to do it again.
You bet. It was a pleasure, and I enjoyed getting the time to catch up with you.
Yeah,
I've always love you, buddy. You've always been one of my favorite guys to coach, and one of my favorite people, and a special person. And I look forward to seeing what you're able to do with this and the lives you're able to influence, because I've watched it for 10 years, the influence that you've had, and I don't think you realize the breadth of influence you've had on other people. And so it's going to be a journey, and it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for this. So,
appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you.